Desperate and alone, two elderly men rent out their spare rooms to younger ladies. Realizing it brings them closer to temptation, they must decide whether to resist or give in to their urges. On New Year's Eve, an elderly Roberto joins a crowd as they count down to the incoming year. As a tradition, they eat 12 grapes at each passing chime of the clock tower to bring in good luck. He spends the next few days normally in his apartment, exercising and doing his chores quietly. At night, he drinks and dances by himself, enjoying what little entertainment he has. One morning, Miriam waits for Roberto to head to his motorcycle before approaching him to introduce her boyfriend, Manuel. Roberto later complains about her actions to his friends, Margarita and Jose, who think he should start traveling so he can enjoy life again. However, he finds traveling with other elderly people horrible. Still, his female friend insists on him joining them on the next trip, so he can finally get over Miriam, who obviously wants to make him jealous. The man denies that his ex-wife is doing this, but Margarita argues that the woman might want him back and is just compensating by dating a younger man. Jose, on the other hand, thinks Miriam doesn't need a reason to date younger men. Margarita takes this as her husband being interested in younger women. He denies this and defends that he just understands why old people like them would be interested in a younger partner. However, the father thinks he's just visiting to borrow some money, so he refuses to let him in. Late at night, however, his friend's advice, along with his loneliness, makes him consider getting a roommate to have some company. He first decides not to be picky about his potential flatmate, but ultimately specifies that he's looking for a female in his online ad. Soon, Carmen visits to check out the apartment and is quickly convinced to rent Roberto's guest room, even paying the deposit up front. She admires the entire apartment, especially how the sunlight pours into the living room. However, Roberto clarifies that she'll just be renting the guest room, so he won't be sharing the rest of the apartment with her. This disappoints the woman, who agrees to move in nonetheless. Soon, Carmen brings her belongings into her new room, though Roberto is away at the time. She carries on with her move, but as she's preparing to head to bed that night, she realizes that she forgot to bring toothpaste. Thinking he won't mind, she secretly takes some from her roommate, though she worries that this will upset the man if he finds out. Late into the night, Roberto finally arrives home, but he's confused that Carmen is there. The woman defends that she messaged him through WhatsApp that she was arriving today, which the old man seems to have missed. Given that it's already late, Roberto decides to help her get settled in the morning instead. The next day, Roberto finds his new roommate enjoying the view from the living room. Carmen excuses that she woke up early, so she thought she could bask in the sun since her room doesn't get much of it. She also defends that sunlight activates the vitamins in their skin, so this is healthy for both of them. Seemingly endeared to her point of view, Roberto allows her to stay in the living room. As days pass, the duo start befriending each other to the point that Carmen jokes about writing a piece about how a man like Roberto would stop his roommate from enjoying the living room. When he wonders what she means, she claims that he doesn't seem like the type of person who would impose such a ban because he's kind and friendly. She then playfully teases the man that he might be hiding something, so he plays along, sheepishly claiming that his soul is trapped there. Later, he clarifies that given their age difference, he needs to know her better before he can trust her in his space. On another day, Carmen catches Roberto meditating in the living room. Shyly, she interrupts him to ask if she can borrow his exercise ball and stretch in the area since it has more space. When Robert allows her, she begins her routine, unaware that her position and figure distract her roommate, who ends up watching her intently. Later that day, Roberto shares with Carlos about his female roommate. His friend grows interested as he talks about how Carmen is an art student. This convinces the man to rent out his guest room, though Roberto notes that having a young woman in his apartment can be distracting. Still, he admits that having her around brings a new joy to his home. One night, the roommates spend time in the living room as Carmen knits some gloves. She finds craftwork relaxing while Roberto chimes in and talks about his fondness for dancing. This piques her interest, so the old man plays a vinyl record and starts dancing. To his surprise, the lady joins him, and the two dance together through the night. On another evening, Roberto finally meets with his son, who claims to be worried about him since he's been acting strange. Alfonso decides that he should have a key to his apartment so he can check on him occasionally, but his father refuses. The young man insists that he just wants to care for him since he loves him, and while Roberto returns the affection, he still refuses. With no choice, Alfonso finally confesses that he's unable to pay his rent anymore, so he's hoping to move in with his dad. Despite this, Roberto believes that his son should be able to figure this out on his own since he's an adult. He also hints that he might start dating again and can't have his son in his apartment while he's entertaining ladies, which convinces him to leave. The following day, the landlord accidentally walks into the bathroom while his roommate is showering. He immediately leaves just before she steps out, though this interaction already has him feeling amorous. With this, the older man prepares roses on the dining table while Carmen cooks dinner. He also compliments her cooking during their meal, which the woman politely accepts. She then switches the topic to his career, so Roberto explains that he's already retired, and that his pension is more than enough for him to live comfortably. Carmen wonders if he only searched for a roommate to have some female company since his ad specifically asked for a young female adult. Roberto contends that youth is overrated and complains how society cares more if someone young is attacked than when it's an older person. He believes that the elderly have already contributed or are still contributing to society, while the youth are just possibilities. He then points out that, as a 23-year-old, Carmen's perspective in life is still limited. She'd been raised in the safety that the older generation provided for her, so she hadn't suffered. Hearing this, she agrees that she's lucky for that, then thanks him for his wisdom. One afternoon, Roberto learns that Carlos also managed to rent his guest room to a young woman. He boasts about her beauty, though he admits that he's disappointed. Given everything he's heard about his friend's roommate, he wishes the new tenant was smart like her. Roberto later finds Carmen in his office, prompting her to explain that she's only trying to restore his angel sculpture since art restoration is part of her curriculum. The older man appreciates the gesture, noting that it was his grandmother's possession. With this, the college student jokes that she's also an angel like the sculpture since she's repairing it and restoring its glory. Roberto agrees, trusting her with one of his prized heirlooms. As the two become closer, Roberto soon takes Carmen out for a motorcycle ride. During this, Jose tells his wife about the man's roommate and how he seems happier since she moved in. Margarita, however, is suspicious about their mutual friend's arrangement, thinking that this can only end badly. Meanwhile, the two flatmates enjoy their night at a pub. Her company brings out his wilder side, so he keeps drinking despite Carmen's reminders that he has to drive. Because of this, he ends up with a hangover when they get back home. The man allows her into his room for the first time so she can care for him. They talk about his replica of a painting called The Kiss, and even argue about the artist's intentions for it. These interactions allow them to bond further, so they continue spending more time together in the next few days. One afternoon, however, they get into a heated debate about the women of the night. Carmen thinks the patriarchal society forced women to sell their bodies to put food on the table, while Roberto believes that people being allowed to earn through intimacy is proof of freedom. He also claims that everyone sells their bodies in a way, even through marriage. The man sees married people as exchanging intimacy for protection and status alongside money. He also defends that paying for intimacy is good for people whom society thinks are undesirable. Carmen is appalled by his statements, insisting that people can live without intimacy, so they shouldn't have to pay for it. On a different night, Alfonso buzzes into his dad's apartment, but is surprised to hear Carmen's voice instead. Upon learning that he's Roberto's son, she invites him in, though he's puzzled that his father didn't tell him about her. The two spend the night talking about the older man, leading Carmen to learn that he divorced his wife since he believed she was cheating on him, despite not having any proof at the time. She also learns that Roberto and his ex-wife were singers, and their divorce resulted in their projects being cancelled. On the other hand, Alfonso shares that he plays the drums, so they head to his apartment, where he plays the drums for her. She soon gets into the music and starts dancing, and the young man eventually joins her. Alfonso later thanks her for accepting his invitation as people usually reject him. She then compliments his music, and he decides to welcome her anytime she wants to hang out. When Carmen arrives back home, her roommate scolds her for staying out late. She's confused as to why he even bothered waiting for her, reminding him that he's not her father. Still, Roberto argues that he can still worry for her even if she's not his daughter. She asserts that they're just roommates before revealing that she was with his son. This further angers the man, who calls his son immoral, causing her to snap back and accuse him of jealousy. However, she brushes off his confession and asserts that, as an adult, she can do whatever she wants. She walks off to get ready for bed but ultimately decides to wait for Roberto in his room. He asks what she's doing there, so she explains that she doesn't want to end the night with a fight. Carmen then confesses her feelings for the older man before inviting him to join her in bed. Awkwardly, he tries to keep his distance by putting a pillow between them, but she decides to pull him close, hinting at her intentions. To her confusion, he politely declines her advances. Roberto thinks she hasn't experienced life enough to know the difference between actual romance and affection toward a pet or the elderly. He assures the woman that his love for her is only because he sees her as his daughter, so he can't take things any further between them. Carmen is disappointed but accepts the man's affection, so she kisses him goodnight before heading back to her room. Days later, the two friends agree to switch tenants, so Roberto soon welcomes Sonia, Carlos's roommate. He shares with her that they agree to spend their time together as an experiment. Meanwhile, Carmen has moved in with her new landlord, who wonders if she's okay with their arrangement. She admits that things between her and Roberto started becoming strange, claiming that the man was having romantic feelings for her. Carlos assures her that nothing like that will happen to him. As days go on, Roberto finds that his new roommate showers with the door open, allowing him to see her. She doesn't even mind him going inside the bathroom while she bathes. One afternoon, Sonia works out to prepare to meet some scouts for a soccer team. When she starts taking selfies, he warns her that her followers might just be creeps, since she just takes selfies all day. He didn't feel a connection with someone like her, unlike Carmen, whom he could talk to about books. The two then start bonding over poetry, which further endears him to her. On another day, Roberto tries to impress Sonia by preparing a full meal. As he does, the woman listens to music and dances, allowing him to admire her body again. However, when he calls the woman to dine with him, she scoffs at the idea. This prompts her to leave without much of a goodbye to her roommate. Carlos is familiar with Sonia's tendency to meet men on Tinder. Notices a photo of her roommate when he was young and thinks he was handsome even as he is now, which appeases him. Later that night, Sonia arrives home drunk and stumbling over. This wakes Roberto, so he goes to her and helps her to her room, even removing her boots for her. The following morning, Carlos mentions to Carmen that his friend might have already slept with his tenant. She doesn't believe this since she knows Roberto lies to make people jealous. To prove this, she reveals that he had already taken her out to make Miriam think they were dating. He even orchestrated a lie to convince his ex-wife that they were happily in love, though when the man moved in for a kiss, she pushed him off. Hearing this, Carlos wonders if she ever gets jealous, but Carmen doesn't think jealousy is the hallmark of love, but for people who think they own their partner. Elsewhere, Sonia apologizes for coming home drunk the previous evening. However, Roberto scolds her for risking herself by getting drunk with strangers. This leads to the two arguing, with the woman believing he's treating her like a daughter, even though he doesn't want one. When she sarcastically tells him to take his former tenant back, Roberto asserts that Sonia is nothing like her, which offends her and causes her to storm off. In contrast, Carmen and Carlos continue to take comfort in each other, finding that they have more in common than their previous roommates. She also helps take care of the older man, admitting that she feels more relaxed around him since he respects her boundaries. That evening, Sonia comes home after a day of shopping and flaunts her new dresses to Roberto. However, she admits that she won't be able to pay rent anymore, so she offers herself as payment for the month. She proceeds to join the older man in bed, negotiating that being with someone as youthful and beautiful as her should be enough compensation, giving the elderly man what he truly wants. Meanwhile, Carmen joins Pedro to visit Katia in her new apartment. She's happy having her own space even though it's a little cramped, prompting her friend to complain about Roberto and how he doesn't let her use the other rooms in his home. The woman adds that the place even has a spacious bathtub, which makes her even more envious since she barely fits in her shower. She soon invites the art student to try out her tub while her landlord is away, and Pedro wonders if they can all fit. Katia insists that it's only enough for her and Carmen, though she'll allow him to watch them. As the two women enjoy a bath together, he observes them closely. Unsurprisingly, the moment gets playful and flirty, with the ladies teasing the man before shutting the partitions for some privacy. This leaves Pedro to only listen as Carmen explores her desires, unaware that Roberto is doing the same.
Subscribe to watch more videos like this, turn on notifications and leave a like to help the channel out. Thank you for watching.